and I'm here today with a guest to discuss a subject which is extremely important. It is debanking, but many people do not know what debanking is and how it can affect their lives. So I think it's a good occasion to talk with a real specialist on the issue of debanking, and I'm here today with Jorge Jraissati, who is of Lebanese origin and who has also Italian and Venezuela nationality. So welcome, Jorge.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me. Yes.
Well, I'm very happy that you came because, as I told our auditors, you are really an expert on this. But since you are Venezuelan, before talking about debanking, I'm a little bit tempted also to ask a question on Venezuela, because you have spent most of your life or a big part of your life in Venezuela.
Yes.
So maybe just from your perspective, a comment on what is happening there. How do you see the situation in Venezuela for the moment?
Yeah, the situation in my country is really tragic. It's the biggest humanitarian crisis in the history of the Western Hemisphere, biggest economic collapse. We don't have any kind of political freedoms in Venezuela. And because of that, then people want change. Everybody in Venezuela just wants democracy and freedom back. They want to have a normal country again. So right now the situation is that Maduro is in power. Maduro is the person ruling in Venezuela. People want change, but we don't have free and fair elections. The US is pushing Maduro to see if Maduro negotiates an exit from the country. So who knows? In Venezuela, just to give you a couple of statistics, in 10 years, we lost 70% of our GDP. Poverty rose to 80%, 50% of extreme poverty. We had hyperinflation for 4 years. So it's really dramatic situation. 8 million people in my country have left out of 30 million. So roughly 1/3 of the population left the country. So it's a really dramatic situation in Venezuela.
I would really be tempted to discuss Venezuela, but it's not our subject today. But thank you for that information. We are also not maybe aware in Europe on how serious the situation is. But let's perhaps talk about debanking. I think that we have to describe first what that term really means. What is debanking? Most of us are clients in a bank somewhere, several banks. Almost everybody has a banking account. So what is debanking? How can it affect our lives as citizens?
The way I explain debanking is that you lose your access to financial services, to your bank account, without any warning, without any explanation, and without any possibility to solve the issue. So one day you receive a letter from your bank that your bank account is frozen, that you need to move your money somewhere else. This can happen either to your personal account, it can happen to your business account, and it's happening more and more than we think. But because it's such a hidden issue with such a high stigma, we just don't see it publicly. But this is happening to many companies, many foundations, many politicians, and of course, people that are in difficult communities.
So it's not marginal, but since everybody very much depends on a bank nowadays in order to live, to pay rent, to cover expenses and so on, if you lose that possibility, actually you are totally marginalized in society. So would it be exaggerated if I told you that debanking has to be considered as a human rights issue?
I believe so. I believe there should be a right to banking. I believe it's a human right. And why? You cannot do anything in society if you don't have a bank account. You cannot pay your taxes. You cannot pay rent. You cannot get any kind of documentation. Honestly, you cannot even have a phone number because you cannot pay most things. You cannot pay with cash these days. I believe it's a matter of human right because you are marginalized from society. You are marginalized from having employment. And the more we have people in this situation, the more they will be tempted to do criminal activities, the more they will be tempted to do black market operations.
But we have in the European Union rules that everybody should have access to a bank account. So how is it then that this doesn't work in a way? Because it happens also in the European Union, I guess.
It happens in the EU, definitely. And it's happening more and more. And we need more statistics because right now we don't have statistics, but it's happening more and more. In the EU, there is a right to payments directive.
Yes.
So there is some sort of ground for this.
Yes.
However, the way it is written, it is very ineffective. because banks are able to debank people on the basis of anti-money laundering concerns.
But don't they have to have proof to do that? I mean, can a bank just say, well, I have a concern about money laundering, you know, Jorge, or I'm now money laundering, whatever, without the proof, without the court, I just say that and then debank you.
This is the problem, which is that if you believe that banking is a right, there should be protections for
Yes.
people. Right now, what banks do is that they can make vague claims or vague statements about somebody and debank them on those reasons. In fact, the client will never know why he or she is debanked, because the regulation prohibits banks from telling to their clients why they're debanked. That's very... You want me to elaborate on this?
Yeah, but we come certainly back, but you say the regulation. Which regulation?
Anti-money laundering rules.
Anti-money laundering. So if
Yes.
you are under suspicion for money laundering, the bank will not tell you. Is that the regulation that you're referring to? So
Yes,
the bank cannot tell you that you're under suspicion for money laundering, but
Yes.
they can debank you.
Let's say that, for example, you are a non-profit, and because of this, then you are supporting activists in Venezuela, just to put an example. And you are a foundation here in Brussels, supporting a think tank in Venezuela. Then just because of that, you can be debanked, but you will never know. Or let's say that only because you are a politician and you are a politically exposed person, you are a diplomat, and the bank doesn't want to have you, they will never tell you why you are debanked. Or if you do international businesses with, I don't know, with Latin America, you can be debanked. Bank will not tell you because anti-money laundering rules prohibit banks from doing so on the basis that they should not give clues to potential criminals about why they're debanked.
But it's already a clue when you are debanked in a way. Huh?
That's what the experts say, by the way.
I mean,
it's a clue.
Yeah.
And the people who are really doing money laundering, by the way, they really understand these rules, they really understand these regulations, and they have ways to overcome them.
Probably they have, absolutely.
And this only catches the vast majority of people that have not committed any crime. I do believe that if somebody is accused, and not only accused, is proven guilty of a crime, a financial crime, yes, block their assets.
Yes.
Or if somebody is doing evasion of sanctions, block their assets. But only if it's proven.
Yes.
Not if it's accusation.
Well, that's the state of law, you know, the rule of law. We're always talking about it, but how do we apply it in practice? That's a different issue I have.
Yeah.
But it's also a political issue. As a politician now, I'm very much concerned with democracy, the rule of law exactly, and so on. And I would not like now this debanking being used for political grounds, you know, but we have suspicion that that happens also. And a few years ago, we had in Canada a large protest movement. The truckers were protesting, and they have been debanked by the Canadian authorities. I mean, is that correct, as I put it?
Yes, when it comes to your first statement, why I'm focusing so much on this debanking issue, which for many people could be like a niche problem, but I believe is not. Because if you weaponize the financial system, you will never have a democracy again. If the states, the bad politicians, the bad actors weaponize the banking system, is the easiest way to destroy somebody for their political views. It is the easiest way to erode free speech, because you don't have free speech if you don't have the financial means to communicate yourself.
Yes.
If you have a company and you don't have a bank account, you cannot even pay for your Gmail account. You cannot access anything. So I believe it's a matter of protecting free speech, protecting democracy, protecting the integrity of our rule of law. You mentioned about the Canada example.
Yeah, we should also discuss a little bit about examples, you know, that people really understand what can happen if you have a large protest movement. What happened then in Canada now with these people?
Canada is a paradigmatic example because we know that bank accounts are all the time frozen in authoritarian countries in Africa or in Latin America or in the Middle East. But Canada is a democracy. And Canada, what happened is that a few years ago, during COVID, there was some truckers who were protesting against the lockdowns, against the government lockdowns. And you can agree or disagree, but the problem is that their accounts were frozen immediately by the Trudeau government at the time, without explanation, without any solution. And they were also fundraising money, so they create what they call a GoFundMe account, they fundraised $10 million, and this money was also frozen and never reached out to them.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely frightening that things like that can, as you say, happen in a democracy, you know. So it's really amazing and frightening. But now we are talking about Canada, but closer to here in the European Union. I think there are also examples, concrete examples of how within this European Union that is so much oriented to the rule of law and has banking access rules and so on, but it happens here also. Do you have concrete examples on what happens here in our countries?
Yes, there is two kinds of debanking. There is direct weaponization of institutions, like the Canadian example, and there is also indirect debanking, which is that you create a series of regulations, and these regulations have as a consequence debanking. This is what's happening in Europe because of the latest anti-money laundering package that was approved. They put so much pressure on the financial system, they put so much pressure on financial compliance and on specific jurisdictions that they create debanking. This is happening to nonprofits. This is happening to, for example, associations that defend issues that could be controversial, like free speech, or women's rights, or anti-LGBTQ rights. This is also happening. It is happening to a lot of diplomats and politicians. It's just that they don't speak about it out of the fear of the stigma. It is happening to defense companies as well, that they try to build up Europe's defense. They are having problems with debanking, or it's impossible for them to access credit.
But again, you know, the examples I think are very telling. I heard of a Dutch NGO, so a non-governmental organization, defending women's rights that has been debanked because they were against the trans ideology, for instance. Is that? Can you confirm that? And also in Austria, it seems that the newspaper has been debanked. So you are talking about freedom of speech, but not only the freedom of speech of the individual, but also press organs can be actually debanked, and then that's basically it's over. You can silence a voice in our democracies by this.
Yes, and I know foundations. I know big foundations here in Brussels, for example, who have been debanked after having 15 or 20 years of bank relations without any explanations. And we are talking about foundations that are financed 100% by the European Union. So we are not even talking about foundations who receive private money, but strictly public foundations have been debanked.
There's one very famous case of a politician that has been debanked, who has been debanked. That's Nigel Farage, I think, in the United Kingdom. Can you give any details or some more details about that case also?
Yes, he made it public when he was debanked. He was debanked from Barclays, if I believe. And he mentioned that one day he received a letter that he was going to be debanked. So this is happening a lot. This is happening a lot here in Belgium. It's happening in France a lot. It's happening in key places. And sadly, it's because of bad regulation. Because we need to protect the financial system and the economy and every institution from being weaponized.
Yes.
But the way regulations are right now is that they are so easy to manipulate and to weaponize for political reasons. So if maybe the owner of a bank or maybe a politician or whoever doesn't like the views of somebody, they can bend regulation in order to debank this person.
Yeah, I mean, we can go further and further. Now we have this aspect of it, but I can imagine that maybe tomorrow it would be enough to be a member of a particular party or whatever. Once you start with this, you know, you never know where it stops. Because we have also basic principles in our society, which is the presumption of innocence. So, but if I understand correctly what you describe, actually this presumption of innocence, and this is a very severe measure that is being taken here. Debanking is a very, very severe measure because it actually puts you in social marginalization. But the presumption of innocence is not considered then.
It is horrible.
There's no court proceedings, nothing actually. You have no lawyer, nobody defends you.
It is horrible because I'm Catholic. And one of the basic ideas that we have is the presumption of innocence. And that individual beings, every person has his own value, because we're all children of God. And that if you're guilty of a crime, you are innocent until proven guilty. And this should be the basis of the rule of law and the basis of really our society. But in banking, it doesn't work that way. In banking, if you are accused of money laundering charges or any financial crime, not only you are debanked and prosecuted heavily and face consequences before being proven guilty,
Social stigma, as you mentioned.
social stigma, etc., but also your surroundings, your family members, your business partners, because you can also be debanked if there's an accusation against a business partner you have or against a family member that you may have. So it's really anti-Western civilization. It is really, because it's such a niche problem, there's not enough attention. Only, again, like a few people that we understand the issue, we are caring about this, but the idea is to raise awareness.
Yeah, that is what we are trying to do right now. But there's one more, I think, a factor that is quite inhumane in this, and that is this the use of artificial intelligence, you know, because there are many banking accounts, and of course they use electronic means in order to screen and to look after everybody and so on. And so you can be flagged, not by a human, but by a machine, actually, and then that can lead also to your debanking. Is that correct?
Yes, the problem is that right now, if you are debanked, you also don't have where to go because the decisions are made by artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence, what they're doing is that they are exacerbating, they are making worse all these biases that we already have on regulation. So they're creating even more stigma, even more problems. So they're flagging all these transactions and all these accounts. And again, there is no due process. There is not an office. There is no a mechanism that you can go to recover your financial access. Because right now, we don't have this mechanism created at the European Union. There should be a place where if you are debanked, you go there and you establish yourself that you are a rightful person and that you recover and you protect your financial access. But that doesn't exist right now.
But I would guess that this concern, it is absolutely, I think, fully justified, and it's not theoretical because it happens all the time. So I would think that you would be in a dialogue with the banking associations or with the EU institutions about money laundering and raising their awareness and drawing their attention to those issues and looking for common solutions. Is that how it happens?
I have found great support at the European Parliament by people like yourself, right, who believe in this, who care about rights, who care about the economy. But on other institutions, like, for example, the Anti-Money Laundering Authority, I want to meet with them, I want to discuss this issue, and the reception is not that great. Why? I believe that they don't understand how deep this issue is, or they have other priorities. But this is really an issue that we have to solve, because people are being hurt right now. A lot of people don't have access to financial services, and the institutions are not doing anything to protect them at the moment. So the reception is better with the people in Parliament, people who care about economic freedom. The reception is not that great with regulators, sadly. And you were mentioning before, if we don't solve this in 5 years, there will be a point in which, because of this AI development, this regulatory development, nobody who's working in politics will have a bank account. And I'm not exaggerating, because everybody will be too risky. No diplomat, no former diplomat especially, no former member of parliament, nobody working in the non-profit sector, nobody doing business with Latin America or with international business in general will be extremely costly and expensive. And defense companies, they also face a lot of challenges. So right now you have the commission saying that they need to spend $800 billion on defense, but at the same time, defense companies have all these compliance issues. So you really need to, if you fix banking, you fix many other things.
I wonder, just it's a question that comes to my mind now listening to you. We have also this discussion about the digital euro, you know, and there would be wallets related to your bank account so that you can fill your digital wallet in order to use the digital euro or whatever. But the wallet is not really a bank account. So if you are debanked, would that, in that case, also mean that you cannot use the digital euro anymore?
Definitely, and we will be in a situation in which you cannot use cash because cash will be outlawed, and you will not be able to have financial services.
Well, they don't tell us that cash will be outlawed. They say that we fight actually that cash should be still in use, of course. But yeah, well,
cash has tremendous value.
Yes.
Especially for these people.
Yes.
And again, it's not marginal. even outside the debanking for political purposes, etc., we know that 10% of Europeans don't have a bank account. We know that in many countries, especially the countries with less GDP, the number is way higher. Romania, etc., way higher numbers, especially in Eastern Europe. So what are we going to do with them? About the digital euro, I really believe that that should not be the priority. The priority should be to make better the system that we have now, more fair, more transparent, more simple, more efficient. You know that the profitability of banks in Europe is half the profitability of banks in the US.
Well, they over-regulated, and at least what they claim, of course.
They
Yes.
over-regulated. They over-regulated in ways that just make life very difficult for not only the people, but also the financial institutions. That's why you have less innovation in the financial sense in Europe as well. Not only traditional banking, but you don't have much fintech. You don't have much crypto assets, business development in Europe. It's because of all this bad regulation, who makes life very hard for all these companies.
But Jorge, now when we come to the conclusion and say what really would be the solution for this, for the debanking, how would you see the way to do it? First of all, maybe on the regulatory basis, or do we have to talk to the banking associations? Of course, we have to raise awareness in the general public so that it becomes an issue, so that it's going to be discussed also in the wider public. But you as a specialist in the matter, how do you see the angle, in which angle should we attack in order to make it maybe less risky also as human right and so on?
You need to, from the philosophical perspective, I believe that there should be a right to banking in Europe. I believe that if you don't have a bank account, you are not part of society. How to make this happen? You need to really reform the way financial compliance and anti-money laundering rules are in Europe. How? There has to be due process if somebody's debanked. There has to be data, because we don't know how many people are being debanked or why. So we need to have data to make good policy. There has to be, all these regulations have to be objective. If somebody is accused of a crime, it's not enough to close their account. They have to be guilty of this crime. You also need to have simple financial regulations. And in general, you need to create protections so that no person is debanked for political purposes.
Yes.
And this is something that should be done from the political institutions, like the European Parliament, because it's the protection of citizens. And it should be done not at the national level. It has to be done at the European Union level, because anti-money laundering laws are European by default. Are global, but that's a different question, but they're European. So I think if you create these protections, if you create data, there should be a report in which we have a way better picture of how many people are being debanked. There is a lot of information that not even me can access because it's protected by regulation. But I would love to know in detail the files of all these cases of the people that have been debanked. So that way we also know how many cases we have in Belgium, how many cases we have in France, how many cases we have, etc. And I think that will make not only our political system stronger, or market economy better, more dynamic, more efficient, or banking system better, and at the end we'll have a better society. I think that Europe desperately needs economic growth, and without a proper, efficient financial system, you cannot have economic growth. And you know that very well from Luxembourg, how important that is.
Well, thank you very much, Jorge. I thank you for these explanations, and I would also ask everybody to help us to defend your rights. If you are faced with debanking, raise the issue. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be ashamed. I think that it is very important that we know what is happening and that we are also addressing the issue with banking associations and, of course, here within the European Parliament on the political level. Thank you for your attention, and see you soon again.